Hey guys, so you can see the title of the video, There Is to Be No More Shame. That is a message that came through me in 2 different Reiki sessions last week, and I've been sitting with it and marinating in this and really feel that I want to break it down for everybody. So basically, Spirit, when she said those words, she didn't mean only for my client. She didn't mean only for me as a person or people in general. She was talking about the entire 3-dimensional narrative, the entire paradigm that we live in today, our current paradigm on Earth. The human systems that have been set up for cycles of thousands of years. So right now we're at the end of what's called the Age of Capricorn. And Age of Capricorn systems are built on hierarchy. And hierarchy exists on shame. And she was talking about how that paradigm is ending, and what do we need to do in ourselves as it does, and what is it going to look like. So if you think about the current system that we have now, we have so many different kinds of shame. We have, class and race and gender, body shame, educational shame, cultural shame, religious shame. We're steeped in it. It's like a stew that we walk around in. It's just everything around us exists to put us into a place and put us into a category, and depending on what category you're in depends on how much shame you're supposed to have. But we also hear about like the twos, right? Like you're too this, you're too that, you're too pretty, too brown, too loud, too angry, too quiet. But shame keeps us quiet, and it keeps us questioning if we have value. We strive so hard just to be enough in the eyes of the people around us. Shame is used to teach us how to behave. It's used to punish us when we step out of line. It keeps us consuming. It's valuable to the economy. It keeps us small and needing to consume in order to escape our shame. And we push ourselves constantly to prove that we're worthy, and we're trying to prove it. We're trying to prove our worth to a system that exists for the sole purpose of telling us that we don't and that we're not. So that is the paradigm that's ending, and she is saying it's not going to be built on this anymore. And what we have to do, our task, is to learn how to recognize the shame that we've been raised with and let it go, right? Because we are informed by it. We're constantly overworking ourselves. We're trying to fix our shame. We're trying to cover it up. We're trying to consume our way out of it. We hurt people by accident or on purpose because we are driven by these cycles of shame. We hurt ourselves. We fall out of love with ourselves under the watchful eye of a hierarchy, right? And it keeps us apart from our hearts. It keeps us apart from each other. It comes in all different ways. It comes through conditioning, through internalized messaging. It's like we eat it. It's like we eat it, we ingest it, and we take it deep, deep into ourselves and ourselves. And even, this is what it's hard to understand. It's like even the wealthiest people among us, right? The most privileged, the ones who seem like they're the most immune, they're not immune, because the shame is the system. It's the system we all live in. It's like the air around us. We're swimming in it. And so many of those people can only conceptualize of themselves in relation to who they're better than or richer than or whatever than, right? They're divorced from their own spirit. So yes, they're suffering a crisis of shame too. They are born, like we all are born, into a system that's so informed by shame. It's like white noise we don't even hear. It's so written into our everyday lives that we don't even realize it's affecting us. We don't see it. We don't smell it. We just kind of feel it. We all do this. We all look out at the world like through these lenses that are also informed by shame, because of course they are, because we're living in a system that's built on it. And even the people, this is so hard for me to talk about. I really fought with Spirit on this over the last week or so, because I didn't want to be the one to say these words. I didn't want to be the one to carry this message. It's deeply uncomfortable for me, partly because of shame, to be the one to say, even those people among us, human beings, who would do the most harm, who are violent, who are selfish, who are bullies, they are also steeped in shame. And if you scratch the surface of any bully or any person who would do violence against another person, you will find a white hot core of shame and sadness and anger. And it hurts to say that we need to look at those people through eyes of the heart, compassionate eyes of the heart, to understand the underbelly of how they got to be that way. It is hard. I do not want to be the one to say these words out loud, because I'm worried about the backlash. But she's been on me to share this, because she says that we cannot break down systems and paradigms of shame without looking at the ways that we use it to our own advantage. Just as we are harmed by internalizing shame that's fed to us, she's pointing out that we use it as like a ratty blanket to make ourselves feel better and keep out the cold, by placing ourselves in the hierarchy as well and saying, well, that person is below me. It's okay to hate that person because they're different. Or I might not be perfect, but at least I'm not that guy, or the hardest one. It's okay to hate so-and-so because their views are hateful. She's saying that's not a way to break a cycle. If you're going to break a cycle, you have to break it in totality. And it has to be by not suddenly absolving people with hateful views, people who would perpetrate violence, people who go out of their way to harm another. It does not mean absolving those people and saying that they're the best people. She says all we have to do is recognize that they are acting from a well of deep shame and projecting outward and acting out the trauma that has been perpetrated against all of us. There's not a soul among us that hasn't been traumatized, because the shame paradigm, the system we live in, exists to separate us from our divinity. And that separation, that diminishment, the forced abdication itself is a trauma. It traumatizes us. So people who act in violence are acting from that wound. I am deeply uncomfortable right now saying those words, but that is what she meant. And the ways that we use the shame to place ourselves in the center, right? To center ourselves in the narrative. we see this so often with people when it comes to things like religion, right? And then this happens in the spiritual crowd too, the so-called like woke and spiritual people. I know so many people who say things like, I'm so spiritually enlightened that I am allowed to look down on other people because they are not as enlightened as me, or they're Christians or whatever. And Spirit is saying, basically, that was another subtext of her message was, I mean, and again, I'm deeply uncomfortable saying these words, but Spirit was basically saying, get my name out of your mouth as an excuse for looking down on other people. She was very firm about that subtext. And she's right. She's right. That's what, I mean, we can't continue to, fall on our own swords by hurting ourselves, by trying to use other people as a means to understand ourselves. We can no longer conceptualize ourselves in relation to who's below us, who's mean, who's this. We have to look out at the world through eyes of the heart. And it's hard. It's damn hard. But that's what's happening. And the paradigm shift I'm talking about, it's not just political. I'm in the U.S. We're about to have a change of the guard in terms of our political system. But we're not, it's bigger than that. It's not just the pandemic, which is a global phenomenon. And systems will be created out of the pandemic that are, shifted from where they are now. Sustainable systems will be created from this. But it's not just about the pandemic. This is also on a scientific level, right? We have a planet that is moving through space. And scientists, astronomers, etc., people who are paying attention to the actual resonant frequencies surrounding the planet are talking about how our planet is awash in these new frequencies of, it's not just love and light, it's gamma rays, it's neutrinos, it's radio waves. We're entering into a literal new energetic portal. Our planet's moving through space into a new energy realm of the cosmos, and there's a spiritual aspect to that. And Spirit is basically saying to us, don't lug your shame across the threshold. There is to be no more shame in this new paradigm. The paradigm will be all-encompassing. It will be changed. The energy of the planet will be changed. Don't stink up the joint by dragging your shame across the doorstep. And that is not to say, she's also very clear. She's saying, it's not to say there's not going to be harm. There's not going to be suffering. There'll be it'll be panacea. No, it's not going to be a utopia. We're still going to make mistakes. We're still going to have ways that we act that we're not proud of, and we want a do-over, and we feel shame, and other people who are misguided and acting out of their own shame are going to hurt us. That's what the earth is for. It's for our souls to experience all, situations and learning experiences, good and bad. So it's not as though all of a sudden everything's going to be, but we can't continue. It will be unsustainable of us to try to continue to build a world that exists to separate us from our divinity. And in order to get back in touch with our divinity, we have to remove those lenses of shame. We have to stop looking at ourselves as though we deserve, nothing. We don't belong, we're unworthy, etc., etc. We have to stop looking at each other that way too. And we can do this. We can recognize, just as we're recognizing with the pandemic, wow, the ways that our educational system, our economic system, or all of these systems are so unsustainable. All of those unsustainable systems are powered by an element of shame. What would happen if we took away that engine? Could those systems become more sustainable? That is what Spirit is saying. And wise people all over the world, of all different backgrounds and belief systems and everything, have been asking for a long time, even in the before times, right, prior to the pandemic. Who would you be? Who would you be if you had never lost sight of your divinity? Who would you be if the world had not steeped you in a stew of shame from the moment you entered the planet? Who would you be? And that is the final message that comes from Spirit. It's a question. She's asking us, who will you be when you finally drop the heavy weight, the unnecessary weight of shame, and walk through that portal, walk across that threshold with your head held high? Who would you be? Who will you be? I'm excited, and I can't wait to see. I love you.